Hello, Spider-Man fans and subscribers to this wonderful channel, all three of you. I haven't made a video in 3 years, and in 3 years before I'd only made 2 videos. Not exactly the most prolific YouTube account, and even you're probably not wondering why I'm starting this again, but just in case, I thought I'd tell you, well, reading Spider-Man comics, talking about them, it's fun, why the hell not? Anyway, so the 2 comics I'm going to be reviewing today, 3 technically, is one of the oldest and literally the newest. First one is Amazing Spider-Man, what is it actually? 14, which is the first appearance of the Green Goblin. Those really well versed in their Spider-Man will have read this issue, probably know quite a lot about it, but a lot of people might not have read it for various reasons. Maybe you'd just find Stan Lee a bit too ridiculous to take seriously. The next issue, or next 2 issues I'm going to review, are the latest 2 issues available. The first 2 Spider Island issues. Well, technically the prologue and the first part, but what's the frickin' difference? The reason I chose these 2 is I think actually there's a lot of parallels to be drawn between Stan Lee and Dan Slott, who's writing the current series. Not that many, but I feel that the tone hasn't changed a whole lot. But anyway, first of all, I want to review the first Green Goblin story. This is a momentous occasion, obviously, because the Green Goblin would become the big bad of all Spider-Man villains. I mean, he was the Lex Luthor, he was the Joker, he was the Magneto, he was the Doctor Doom of the Spider-Man world. I mean, you could argue Doc Ock or maybe even Venom took this position, but let's face it, the Green Goblin, he was in the first movie, he dropped Gwen Stacy off the bridge, and frankly, he kicks freaking ass. But did he when he first appeared? Now, some people say that the first appearance, he's kind of just a completely ridiculous character. And he is a ridiculous character. And I think they even say in the intro that he's a ridiculous character. But you can't help but love him precisely because he's so fucking ridiculous. I mean, all Spider-Man villains at this stage were absurd. But, you know, the Vulture looked like a bird because he flew. Dr. Octopus had mechanical arms that were strong. The Lizard looked like a lizard because he was a lizard. Alright, these are bad examples, but you get my point. There was always a practicality to the ridiculous nature of previous villains. The Green Goblin dresses up like a villain because why the hell not? And he throws around pumpkin bombs and bats and God knows else because, once again, why the hell not? He also rides around on a mechanical broomstick because, actually, that one is quite practical. Although we'll see later that he replaces that with a Goblin glider, which is a lot more practical and doesn't look nearly as stupid. However, this story is a lot of fun. Essentially, the Green Goblin tricks Spider-Man into appearing in a movie with himself and the Enforcers. The Enforcers being introduced in Spider-Man 10 and are basically some of the lamest, but in a fun, kitschy way, villains of the Lee Ditko era. Now, Spider-Man agrees to this, of course, because he needs money for Aunt May's medicine or rent or something, as usual. And Peter Parker is told to go along by Jameson. They're going to New Mexico, by the way, because, well, that's always convenient if Peter Parker can be in the same place as Spider-Man without anyone suspecting a thing. Now, while they're in New Mexico, and when it becomes clear that this is not actually fiction, they are trying to kill Spider-Man, they stumble into a cave where, lo and behold, the Hulk is residing. Now, it's really funny reading this comic retrospectively. We're here for the intro of the Green Goblin, yet they're introducing a new villain, so they have to write him on the back of the established villains of the Enforcers, plus the star power of the Hulk. So it's a weird tone. You have to deal with all these other characters that kind of shrouding what you want to get to, the Green Goblin, yet you sort of know that at the time of actually reading this, people would have really thought, no, this Goblin guy, who the hell is he? I just want to read about the Hulk. Or maybe the Enforcers, but somehow I doubt anyone ever liked the Enforcers. But, nevertheless, the whole story does come together in that bizarre, idiotic way that Lee did so well. It's so absurd, it's so stupid, illogical, corny, yet it's so much damn fun. this whole movie idea is just a parody of itself. The director is called BJ, and he says that he won an Oscar from the thing that came from the Black Lagoon, something to that effect. I mean, it doesn't take itself seriously whatsoever. This is a far cry from the comic collecting, YouTube reviewing culture that, you know, the industry would eventually turn into. Anyway, the Green Goblin is a really bizarre villain for the time. There's this sort of real psychopathic genius to him, which would later become the dominant trait of Norman Osborn, particularly since he took over in the Marvel Universe. At the same time, there's also this quality of him being completely insane, like Joker level insane, because he rides around on a broomstick and he's dressed in a Green Goblin mask. So it's these conflicting elements that already make the character interesting. Obviously, this would be explored in much more depth later on, but even here you kind of see that this villain is really interesting. And I think Lee and Ditko recognised this, and the readers did. I don't know, I don't read the letters pages. As they brought him back 2 more issues later, and then they brought him back continuously until he was finally defeated in, I think it was 39, where it's revealed he's Norman Osborn. Interestingly, they're already placing big emphasis on the mystery of who the Green Goblin is at this stage, even though they haven't introduced Norman Osborn yet. Regardless of which, the story is stupid, but it's a lot of fun. And if you want to know what Spider-Man in the Stan Lee era was all about, this is worth a look. Although, there probably are better issues. But still, it's a lot of fun. And of course, Steve Ditko's art is amazing. Spider-Man. Alright, that was lame. Now, the next story is flashing 600 issues later, is Spider Island, written by Dan Slott. Now, there's been a lot of hype about this event, and I was worried this is going to be another one of, you know, the other, God forbid, Maximum Carnage, big crossover event where we have to buy 1 million different books, spend a lot of money for a story that's not that great. And it's shaping up not to be like that. First of all, it looks like they actually are trying to contain the story within the main book, which I always appreciate. And actually, this story's sort of original. And I kind of thought they'd run out of ideas about 20 years ago, but apparently not. Essentially, the plot is that the Jackal... Yeah, I know everyone who hates the Clone Saga is already Wade. The Jackal has put bed bugs in the people of New York, and now they've turned into Spider-Man. By the way, I'm confusing issue 1 and 2. I forget which one, so this is a review of both of them. The Jackals put bed bugs that give people spider power in the beds of the people of New York, and they now all have spider powers, and everything's crazy. It's a silly idea, but it's a fun one. And so we get to see Peter's girlfriend run off to be Spider Cop in a bit of a cringe-inducing scene, but sort of sweet scene. Meanwhile, random thugs are acting like spider people, and the Avengers and the Future Foundation are completely worn out with having to deal with all the various Spider-Man, including Spider-Man himself, who was initially mistaken as a villain. Like the Stan Lee days, it's pretty ludicrous, but once again they're focusing on fun, and it seems like more than ever they're really getting down to what they wanted with Brand New Day, and I'm aware that, what is that now, that's about 4 years ago, but it seems they've finally kind of got a hold on what they wanted. And all I can say is, as I've been rereading the old Stan Lee issues, they've really managed to go back to that same style. There's even parts where Dan Slott describes what's going on in the dialogue, which was such a hallmark of that early 60s style. Admittedly, it's a really terrible way of writing things, but there's such a sort of nostalgic love for it that it's actually quite refreshing to see in a comic. And as well as that, there's some really witty lines. I mean, there's one part where MJ is walking down the street and says, "Don't tell me we're doing the clone thing again." And that's another point. Looks like they actually are, because the Jackal's back, Kane's back, Madam Web's back. Well, she had nothing to do with the Clone Saga. But it looks like we're headed for a full return to the Clone Saga in whatever form. And frankly, I'm quite interested to see how they do it. Because the Clone Saga, it was a bit of a clusterfuck, but it had some interesting moments. So at the moment, Spider Island, good. As always, first appearance of Green Goblin, great. I will review the next parts of Spider Island. Maybe I'll review them weekly. Maybe I'll just round it up when it's over. But I hope you like this review. I'll review another one next video. I am thinking Maximum Carnage, maybe even Clone Saga, something controversial. And of course, any questions, comments, etc. Comment, video response, whatever. And thanks for watching.